So when we first pull up any SOC 1 or any SSAE 16 reports, one of the first things I do is I look at the date. In this case, it's October 1st through March 31st. And that's because, hello everyone, welcome to this training session on SSAE 16 and how to review and map controls for Equity Edge. For SOX compliance, many companies will have to obtain the SOC 1 reports, which is SSAE 16 Type 2 reports for Equity Edge. Equity Edge is a very commonly used program to calculate stock-based compensation, track stock grants, cancellations, and vestings, and so forth. And so it's very relevant for many of our clients. And so this session is meant to be a hands-on, how do I do this, so that you can perform your job and check it off the list. So we're going to go over, is this SSAE 16 a Type 1 or Type 2 report? What does an unqualified opinion look like? How long is the report good for? Who or what are the user control considerations? What controls am I relying on? What's a bridge letter? And what do I do after I review the SSAE 16 report? So let's dive into it. Is this report a Type 1 or a Type 2? And you can only rely on a Type 2 report because a Type 1 report says that So let's look at the report together. Here is the E-Trade, who actually owns Equity Edge. Here's the report. And one of the first things I do is I look at the date of the report to make sure that it covers the period I'm interested in. I'm going to assume that you have a calendar year-end, a 12/31 year-end company. And so the latest report from Equity Edge actually goes from October 1st, 2014 to March 2015. So at least it covers 3 months of the year that we're interested in. So that's good. So even before we figure out if this report is effective or not, I just want to know, should I be reviewing this report? Then the next part I do is I go to the auditor's report, which is section 1, and that's typically the case on page 1. And here is where you will see that it will say that this is the general auditor's opinion. And you'll see that it says that we've examined E-Trade Equity Edge product. It's the period that you're interested in. And not only that, but it says that it's suitability of the design. So that's the design effectiveness. And it talks about operating effectiveness of the controls. That's very important. That's what we're looking for, is to ensure that we have both design and operating effectiveness. So we have a Type 2 report, which is very important for you. Now that we know that we have a Type 2 report, we need to make sure that it's an unqualified opinion. And an unqualified opinion means that the opinion from the auditors is that it's clean. There's no qualifications about whether you can rely on it or not. And so I'll take you to the report and show you where we can see that it's a clean opinion. To find out if you have a clean opinion or not, you're going to look at the auditor's report. The first paragraph is the introduction that we already covered, but the second part that we're looking for, the important part, is the opinion. And so this is literally where it says, in our opinion, in all material respects, it starts in. And the first point A will usually say that the description of the information technology, general description of the system, is accurate. The one that you're really interested in is point B and C. B talks about whether the control objectives were suitably designed. Were the controls designed well to do what they're supposed to do? And in this case, they're saying it was designed well. And C is even more important because it says that the controls tested together with the user entity controls that they reference were, if the user controls were operating effectively, that these Equity Edge's controls are operating effectively. So now you have a clean opinion and you can actually rely on this report. So now that you know that you can rely on this report because it covers to March 31st, well, how long is this report good for? Because if you're a calendar year end, you have 12 months of operations that you need to ensure all the controls were working. And this report actually only covers to March 31st. And so the typical guideline, there's no bright line in the SEC guidance or the PCAOB guidance, but usually if your report is within 90 days of your year end, so if your calendar September 30th is the last day that you should be getting it if you're a calendar year end. In this case, it's March. So you now have 9 months that you don't know if the controls were working well. What that means then is you're going to need to do alternative procedures or additional procedures. And that's where you would get what's called a bridge letter. And I'm actually going to show you what a bridge letter is. And what a bridge letter is really, it takes the period from the latest report date that they've given us to whatever period they're willing to opine to say, our environment, our controls have not changed. So let me take you to that section now. So here is a separate file, and it's a separate letter that you would have to get from E-Trade, whoever your stock administrator. This is dated August 31st, and it references and it says, Dear Value Client. They're going to say that in the outsourced operations of so-and-so, it was completed. The report date, and this was done, your report was done according to the AICPA standards. The SSAE 16 report emphasizes the accuracy of the procedures and the controls that were built around it. It confirmed the operating effectiveness. It confirms the design of the control. And the report covered the period from October 1st through March 31st. Then this person just says that they're attesting that the examination conducted, there were no material changes up to August 31st, which is basically the date of this report. So the alternative procedure that you're saying is, I then reached out to the company up to August 31st. This person is confirming that that report that we were relying on March 31st, everything was still operating up to that point. Typically, many of these companies will do 2 SOC reports. They'll do one as of March 31st, and then they'll do another one as of September 30. So if you're a December 31st year end, you can wait until around November or December and ask them for a follow-up. But sometimes the reports don't get issued until January, when it's not as helpful to you. But in this case, you at least know that for the period of 2015 up to August 31st, the controls were working and were in place. As you remember, in the opinion, it talks about user entity controls or user entity considerations. What that means is that our processes, Equity Edge's processes, are working great, but you as the user also need to have controls in your processes before you can rely on ours. And so I'm going to take you to the part of the opinion so that you can actually see where you find it and ensure that you've mapped out your controls. So I went back to the Equity Edge report, and you'd have to scroll through. In this case, it's on page 26 where you find complementary controls at user entities. And it basically says Equity Edge works great as long as you, the user, also have complementary controls that complement ours to ensure that it works well, both the process works well. And so here you'll see that E-Trade has now broken it down by information, security, change control, and it will actually list out a series more of it. And actually this is great because they've only listed 6. Most of the time what you'll find is there's a lot more controls. So what I'm going to do is show you on an Excel how we map out and document our review. So this is what our process looks like when we are doing the review of a SSAE 16. We have an Excel file that will have, here's our objective, to verify the review of the control was performed for 2015. The controls were relied on, and we have a description of it. We will do control reference number if there's a reference number you have, and a sample size is once per year because generally we only get one of these reports. We also put a source, which is what is the report, the name of that report in case someone had to review it with us. Our procedures. We had to get the report, we have to verify with the stock administrator. These are the various steps that we have to do. This is our work program. And in our case, we have the conclusion as well because I did the work already. But you'll see here that this is what it looks like. And so now we go down. So equity stock administration, this is Equity Edge is what we're reviewing. The report auditor is Brightline, which you got from the opinion. The report period was from October 1st to March 31st, 2015. You can see that the opinion on design effectiveness, it was unqualified on page 5. That's what we showed you earlier. And the opinion on operating effectiveness was also unqualified, also on page 5. And then here are the notes. So this is where we say this is a listing of user control considerations from E-Trade, and we even tell you the page, 26, and that the company controls that meet those objectives. And the reason why we want to reference all of these numbers is that if someone were to re-perform the work that you're doing, we want them to easily come to the same conclusion. So here you'll notice number 1, they have information security, and it says the user entities are responsible for ensuring confidentiality of any user accounts and passwords. And so then what we do is we list all of the E-Trade controls that they said we should have. User entities are responsible for ensuring confidentiality of any, so it's the same one. We happen to have 2 controls that map this. So then we will write down, here's our control number, here's what our description. System privileges to maintain Windows Active Directory, blah, blah, blah. Whatever your controls are, you want to reference it here. And then we also reference what are the controls address. Here's what the comments that we have. And we also put conclusions. Now, sometimes you're going to find that we don't have effective controls, and then you'll actually need to have mitigating controls to match those as well. And so what I've shown you is the full list of how we go and we list out the user entity controls that we have here. We'll list each of them. You notice that there were 6 on the report, and here we've listed those, and we have, in our case, we have multiple controls that fit one of their objectives. It's great because when you have multiple controls, if one of your control fails, you can say, but I have mitigating controls. These are the 3 other controls that would have caught this particular issue for us. So that's how we review the user control considerations. After you've addressed the entity user considerations, now you're going to ask, well, what controls am I relying on from Equity Edge? And here is where I'm going to show you on the report what you should be reviewing. So on the SOC 1, you will actually look at the section 4, which is the testing matrices. It's basically the test results. And I'm going to scroll through this so you can see. They've done a good job here of saying, here are the types of procedures that we do. We inquire, we observe, or we inspect, and our sampling and our results. And then you go here. And on this page, you can see these are the controls that they have. Here's what the auditors actually did and their test results. And to be honest, because I've looked at so many of these SOC 1 reports, I now really just focused on the test results and identify items that have exceptions. So I will scroll through and I'll just look and see wherever there are exceptions. And if there are no exceptions, that's even better because it means that it's a clean report. And you can see here, for the first objective, there were no exceptions noted. For physical security, we're in the next section. There were no exceptions noted either. This is great. This is how most reports should be because the more exceptions you have, it means that you have to do more work to verify that you can rely on those controls. And so I'll actually scan through computer operations. I'll scan through anything else they have. Good. Wow, they've made it easy for us. This next section is on change control. So there's no exceptions noted so far. No exceptions noted so far. And I'll continue to do this procedure. And as you see, information security is our next objective. Again, no exceptions. No exceptions noted. And it looks like this report is pretty darn clean. So that's the procedure you would do, is just review and see if there are any exceptions. In this case, there were none, which is great. The last part of this, what do I do after I review the SSAE 16 report? What's that finishing touch so that anyone reviewing your work will know I've reviewed it and I've concluded on it? Let me show you. So we go back to our work paper, and at the conclusion part, we say, based on the results below, review of SSAE 16 was effective. E-trade controls over equity stock administration can be relied upon. And we even put that we got a bridge letter. Our bridge letter covered the period from here to here, which is within 3 months, in this case, our client's year end, or your year end. And then here's where you can see management review for major findings. This was done. There were none that we're aware of. And roll forward procedures, we actually obtained the letter and we put it here. So those are the finishing touches to what you do after you review the entire report. And now anyone going back and looking at your work can reperform it and see the conclusions. I hope this was helpful, and we look forward to talking to you in the next session.